Well, the Trump shooting, it's been about a month since that took place. Now we're going to look at a fresh look at new stuff. We're going to talk about that episode on today's YouTube channel. We're delighted to have you with us today on what we call the fastest podcast in recording.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, James, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Charlie?
I'm doing great, man. Can't wait to talk about our episode we dropped this past weekend, right?
Yeah, it was really, really good. I listened to it. Actually, I listened to it twice.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, we called it a fresh look at and some new stuff. You know, we were thinking about going a different direction. However, so much stuff just keeps coming out about this terrible, terrible day on July the 13th when they almost killed the former president of the United States. So just lots of stuff coming out and a lot of things to talk about. But before we get into that, James, we'd like to invite all of our listeners out there to reach out with a shout out. They can reach us at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. And if you like to support the program, going over there to peacemakernetwork.com. There you can become a badge, BADGE supporter. And for as little as $3 a month, hey, James, they can not only help our podcast, but they can help those brave men and women to run toward danger instead of away from danger, right?
That's right. Our men and women in law enforcement, our first responders, and our military.
That's right. You read all about that at peacemakernetwork.com. And then if you'd like to find out some more about the other episodes, you haven't been following us, you're new, just go to Charlie Crimebuster at charliecrimebuster.com, right?
charliecrimebuster.com. That's right. charliecrimebuster.com.
Yep. And of course, I guess they know how to find us on YouTube because if they're listening to us, they're there, right?
That's right. That's right. Tag at Charlie Crimebuster and you'll find us there. Or you can Google us. Just type in Charlie Crimebuster and we'll pop right up.
Right. And by the way, also, James, there's a way they can subscribe to the YouTube channel, correct?
That's right. All they have to do is push that red button, that little red button right there on screen. It says subscribe. They can subscribe to this and other episodes so that every time we drop one, they can actually be notified that we've dropped an episode for them to listen to or watch.
So it will notify them when the next one is out there, correct?
That's right. Every time we drop an episode in our podcast platform or we drop an episode in the YouTube channel, either one, they'll get notified.
Man, you can't beat that. So, folks, let me encourage you now. James, are we able to put these links in notes on the YouTube channel as well?
Yes, they are there.
Oh, they're there. All right. So the YouTube channel, you just hit the link and you'll be right there.
That's right.
So, James, let's get into our discussion today about the Trump shooting. Fresh look at new stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned that there was a fresh look at Cook's digital footprint. Did we find anything new other than what you shared with us on the podcast?
Well, there is, of course. I think we got to remind ourselves that when you look at his digital footprint, you could tell that he was a guy on a mission. He had actually Googled Oswald shooting, how far he was from Kennedy when he shot. Mm-hmm. He also Googled about school shootings. He also Googled about the targets, talked about he Googled the Democratic National Convention, by the way, that took place this week. So, you know, if Trump had not come through town, who knows? He may have showed up there at the Democratic Convention, because
it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, it was very obvious that he was looking for targets. One thing that came out, though, that's new is that he also was looking at pornography on his phone. And then one thing that I did point out in the podcast, there's been a lot more visual sightings digitally of him that day in July the 13th. And one of the persons there who had a little stand where they were selling some collectible stuff, actually caught him on camera while he was staring at his phone. Now, they don't know whether he was talking to anyone or whether he was just reading something, but he was very, very relaxed, by the way. I mean, you know, you wouldn't think that this guy's getting ready to take a shot at the former president. I mean, he was very relaxed, but he was staring at his phone. And on the podcast, I asked our people, hey, what do you think if he was calling someone? Who do you think he was calling and who was he talking to? Would that be interesting to know?
That certainly would be interesting to know for certain.
Yep. And, you know, that brings me to another thing. The things that we have been sharing on the podcasts and on our YouTube channel, James, those are things that are coming out as we are researching this and staying right on top of it. But think about this. I wonder, James, what it is that they're not sharing with us about his digital footprint.
Exactly. That's what I
Because
want. That's what I want to know.
yeah, because I would just about bet you that there are some things that they're keeping from the public regarding his digital footprint.
Well, he was
Now,
also, wasn't he also seen at the shooting range?
oh yeah, right.
43 times, right?
Well, 43 times. Yep, exactly. 43 times. They have, you know, investigated.
Recently.
Right. Well, they went back and they went to the shooting range. He was a member of a club there at that range, he and his family. And they looked at, you know, every time you go in and you use it, you have to sign in.
Right.
And in not even quite a year, he had been there 43 times. And that's a lot of times to go to a shooting range.
That's about averaging about once a week.
Yeah, you know, I shoot and a lot of our people out there do, but I would dare say that very few of them would book 43 times in less than a year. So he was certainly practicing. And they also found out that he was spending most of his time at the rifle range, not the pistol range, which you meant, you know, who knows how long really this was in his mind to do something like this.
Right.
You know?
Right. Wow. So do we have a motive yet?
Well, they keep saying that they have not, the authorities are telling us that they have not found a motive. However, James, about 2 podcasts ago, Charlie Crimebuster, we revealed a motive, and I believe that we're right on target on it. I believe his motive, even though we're not hearing this from the experts, I believe his motive is the same motive that we find in most mass shooters. As we said on the podcast, his actions mirror more of a mass shooter than it does an assassin. You know, he went through those stages we talked about. And a mass shooter, we basically know that the greatest part of their motive is to be not famous, but we call it infamous, you know,
right?
Because they will be known now forever, you know, and he will be known not as being famous, but infamous. And usually we find that to be true. So I think his motive was just that. I think his motive was that he felt like his life wasn't really going anywhere, that he wanted to be known, and he wasn't that popular. And now, you know, people, here we are on this podcast, and millions of people across the world have heard the name Michael Cooks. You know, I mean, they certainly understand now his name. And so I believe that motive is just that, because again, if you remember when we talk about a mass shooter, there are several stages. And if you can intervene in those stages, you may be able to stop a mass shooting. One was planning. Well, you and I just talked about that, right? Over the last year, he went to that firing range 43
times.
Yeah. There is also the procurement. We know that he had a rifle. We know that he went out and actually procured a ladder. Interesting enough, he never really used the ladder, didn't have to use the ladder, climbed up on an air conditioner thing, but he had a ladder. So that says to me that in his mind, he was thinking all along that he was going to take that shot from somewhere high up.
And he also procured more ammunition as well.
Yeah, ammo, right? There was procurement. And then after that, of course, there is that other area, the other P we talk about, which is practice. And again,
shooting range.
Yeah, he certainly practiced. Even
Yeah.
even the day right before, he went one more time to the shooting range, that afternoon.
Right. Right. But what differentiates him from an assassin versus a mass shooter?
Well,
What's the differentiation?
the differentiation is just what we've just discussed. That usually that's what happened. Now, assassin is more focused on. Usually, there's an ideology involved in it. They usually have some sort of mandate. There's some sort of ideology tied to it. We
Mm-hmm.
can't find any of that tied to him. We can't even say, that, well, he was a Democrat that was mad at the Republicans. And we can't say that because he also gave to Democratic people.
Mm-hmm.
We can't
Mm-hmm.
say that he just targeted Republicans because he also was looking up the Democratic convention. So the biggest difference, I think, is that usually an assassin is either a paid assassin, he's on a mission, he doesn't have anything tied to it at all, or there's some ideology back to it. In this situation, it just everything points. He more aligns, and keep in mind that I don't think anybody will align totally in either way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at all the characteristics, he more aligns with a mass shooter than he does as an assassin.
Wow. Well, changing focus just a little bit. What's a couch felon again? I
Well,
know I've heard of couch potato, but
yeah,
couch felon.
we all know about couch potatoes, and sometimes we're all too guilty of being a couch potato.
Yeah.
but this was our crazy crook story, and it happened in Citrus County in Florida. Boy, we have more crazy crooks in Florida, do we not? James?
We do.
Yeah, we never run out of them. Well, this lady was actually wanted. She'd already violated probation. She was a felon. They already had charges out for selling drugs too, and all kinds of other stuff. But she was trying to hide from the popo. But of all the places that they found her, when they found her, she was actually hidden in a couch inside, literally, and you can't make this up, literally inside a couch. That's where she was hiding. And so, I'm thinking, if I'm going to hide from the police, what do you think?
Wow. So what do we find out about the planning of the event?
Well, as we said, I think several episodes ago, we mentioned the fact that if we could look at the plan of action for the Secret Service, we would learn a whole lot about what would be happening that day. And in looking at it, we do find that there was a plan of action, that they did go in and they did go through all the emotions of planning. However, to many people, it would seem that they were very organized, but there were a lot of other people that did not think so. A lot of the law enforcement on the ground thought that the planning really wasn't up to par. In fact, one of the sheriffs in the area was actually quoted as saying, talking about the event coming up, he said, "It is going to be a circus." So I think it's pretty sad when the elite law enforcement agency of the world comes to town, and even local law enforcement feel like they could plan better than the elite agency could.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And in this plan, I think the sad part about it is that over and over again, several times we're reading about this, that they had pointed out that very roof where he shot from, and they had pointed out to the Secret Service, you guys need to have somebody on that roof.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in the body camera of one of the officers after the shooting, you can hear him saying to one of his other police officer friends, he says, "I told them twice. Yeah. They have to have somebody on that roof."
Earlier in the week, on Tuesday.
Right, yeah. And yet they did not have anybody on the roof, which is really, 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 really sad. That I guess you can have the greatest plans in the world, but if you don't follow through with your plans, then, I think that's what we're finding to be true in this terrible, terrible day.
But to leave a communication device in the Secret Service outpost, that was actually the channel that the local law enforcement was communicating on, that
Yeah,
they were
was,
gone. They didn't hear
yeah,
the call.
that was the Butler Police, the Butler County Police or Sheriff's Office.
Right.
They had a sniper team there too,
Mm-hmm.
and they had actually left them, according to the reports, and according to there was a Louisiana congressman. I called him in the episode. I said that he wasn't a happy camper, and he wasn't, because of several things. But even he brought out in his report, he brought out the fact that this Butler County had 2 radios that was already set to the channel, gave them to the Secret Service, wanted to give them the Secret Service, told them to come by and pick it up. They did not do it. Then he reminded them the day before, you need to come by and pick up these radios. Had they picked up those radios, they would have the Secret Service and the counter sniper team of the Secret Service, who took him out after the fact, they would have known by the police chatter that was already on their radios that there was a man on the roof and he had a gun, and there was enough time that they could have taken him out before anybody was shot.
Right.
If they had just been on the right channel. But these guys basically just said, hey, they ignored the local sheriff's office saying, we have these radios. I don't know why. I can't say why, but I can say it is a glaring mistake. And I'm sure that from this day forth, they'll make sure they have a real contact with local law enforcement on the ground. Well, I think we see this a lot. Particularly, I was a chief deputy in a sheriff's office, and we always appreciated very much. We had in our state, we had the TBI, which is the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and we had the FBI, which is the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and all local law enforcement appreciate the support that these people give us, and it is not quite as bad as it was back when I was out on the street. But there was the feeling that some of these agencies felt like they were a little bit above the local law enforcement on the ground.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I do understand that they have a lot of training. Most of them have a lot more education, all that. But you got to remember that the local guys on the ground are the guys that really know what's happening.
Right. Right.
I don't know if you remember or not, but remember back during the Atlanta bombings when Rudolph was out.
Yes.
And he was out in the woods. I remember that very well because I was a part of some of the manhunts for him up in the hills of North Carolina. And I recall, when I was there and we had all these federal agencies there. Oh, I call it the alphabet soup, the FBI, all the different agencies were there. And I said, folks, I said to my friends and around me, I said, we're probably not going to find him, but I guarantee you he'll be found. And when they're going to find him, it's probably going to be some local law enforcement officer.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, a year and a half, 2 or 3 years later, it was not the federal task force that found Rudolph, but it was a lonely, low deputy sheriff doing his patrol in a small town that found him trying to get stuff out of a dumpster. And that's how Rudolph was caught. Also, Ted Bundy, the serial killer, all the manhunt that was trying to find him. Every time he was arrested, it was a local law enforcement officer that arrested him.
Right.
It pulled him over, for driving, this sort of thing. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think we're seeing a little bit here, and I can't say for sure, but it looks to me like, the Secret Service thought, well, hey, we're professionals. We know what we're doing. We don't need your radios. But they did need those radios.
Right.
Because what they said when they said we had these 2 radios here, we urged them to come across and get them, but they didn't. They did not get those radios. Had they had those radios, they could have intervened. That made a difference.
Right. Well, Charlie, you mentioned something about the crime scene being cleaned up way too fast. Can you
Well,
cover that again?
that goes back to our unhappy camper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Higgins from Louisiana. And by the way, I've got a lot of respect for him because
Yeah,
he wasn't just a representative that was coming on and trying to get some kind of political attaboys or try to build some political strength with everybody.
right.
Uh, he was actually a former police captain, so he knew a little bit about law enforcement, and he was doing his own investigation for the Congress. And while he was doing his investigation, he wanted to look at the body, but guess what? The body was gone.
Yeah,
Just after a few days, they released the body back to the family. And then not only that, I guess what really astonished him is not only did they release the crime scene, just after 3 days, I think.
yep,
Not only did they release the crime scene, but they cleaned up the crime scene.
right, right.
And anybody knows, the crime scene is where you get your evidence. Now, I will say that we all know who did this shooting, but there's always going to be questions. Remember, after Oswald, there are always going to be people saying, was somebody else involved? Is
Yep,
there a conspiracy?
yep,
And that's why it's very important to have transparency. And he says, the congressman says, Higgins says, that the FBI should have known that there were going to be these congressional hearings, and they should have held the crime scene longer, and they should have been able to review the body, because right now all he said he had to go on was photos.
right.
And he said, I can't really say that those photos are a true picture of what the body looked like because I never got to see the body.
Right.
So I don't know. What do you think, James? You think that they were too quick to turn over the crime scene, too quick to turn over the body?
It leads too much to the aspect that there might be some conspiracy. That's all. It leaves the door open just enough for conspiracy theorists to have a field day with it.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I'm saying, maybe he wouldn't find anything different. Maybe there would not be anything he would pick up from it. But just the fact that they did that, like you said, it leaves the door wide open for speculation, right?
Right, right.
And when you speculate, you get all of these, theories that people come up with, and conspiracy theories will go galore. And I'm sure we're going to hear more and more conspiracy theories about this. So I guess I would probably agree, even though I don't think that the FBI, I don't think in turning it over that they did anything illegal, but I don't think it was very smart to turn it over that quick, I guess.
No, I agree.
Say.
I agree. That was just,
Yeah.
it just a hint. I mean, even with me, there's a hint that there's just something not right. Something just doesn't set right,
Yeah, and especially when you think about the fact, that when they first had Chittle there, remember when Chittle came,
right?
And she just wouldn't answer any questions.
No.
I mean, she just beat around the bush. I called her, dodgeball Chittle. She just dodged the questions.
Yep.
And that immediately brought a lot of speculation to it right then. Well, what are you trying to hide?
Exactly. Red flags all over the place.
Yeah. Yep. And then thankfully the acting director did come, and he was a little more forthwith about the information, which I think was very important. But the very fact that they did, the FBI and they turned the crime scene over too quickly and did not keep the body, it does leave the door open for all kinds of speculation. So transparency, I think, is critical. And I think more and more police departments are seeing that because, today we're used to when they had maybe a questionable shooting. It would be months and months and months before they could see the body camera.
Right.
But today, law enforcement has learned transparency is critical. It's important.
Right.
So they're releasing those a lot quicker. They're getting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
They want the public to know what is happening. And I think that probably in this situation, it would have been probably a little better for them to, get a little more opportunity for other people to look at it and come to the same conclusions.
I agree. Well, you mentioned that there are always things that we pick up after we drop an episode. What new stuff do you have for us today?
Well, I have a very, very interesting thing that I ran across, and it appears to be true, and it kind of lines up with what I had thought all along. Because when I was listening and you gotta have to listen carefully. When you listen to the shots, you see that that Cooks did his shooting,
Mm-hmm.
and then we know that the counter sniper team took him out.
Right.
But if you listen very closely, there's appears to be two shots, not one shot from the sniper team. And so what I have learned, and I think this is fascinating, really. If you remember, there were actually two counter sniper teams.
Right.
One was the Secret Service counter sniper team. The other was Butler County. Butler County had their own sniper team there.
Right.
Now, Butler County, they could not see him as well as the Secret Service sniper team did.
Yeah, elevation issues.
Yeah, but they did see him enough to get a shot off. And that shot hit Cook's rifle and bounced off. Well, who knows? That might have stopped him from shooting even more people before the other shot took him out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's, I mean, we talk about, and rightly so, that certainly it would have been so much better if they had been able to take him out before he did his damage. But after he shot, it was doggone quick that they took him out, right?
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Within seconds.
Yeah, they took him out quick, and we've given a lot of praise as a nation to that Secret Service sniper team. But again, that local department deserves a lot of praise too.
Right.
Because they took the first shot at him.
Right.
Even though they didn't have a clear sight at him,
Wow.
So that's the new stuff. Had you heard about that?
I had not heard that there was a glance bullet. I didn't. I was unaware of that.
Yeah, and I mean, they couldn't see him, but they could see that rifle, and so he aimed at what he could see. And
wow.
we teach people. We do a lot of training, with people in our schools that we protect. In my security company, with the private schools that we protect, we train people that if that person comes through the door and you've barricaded the door and you're out of the called the fatal funnel, and you're ready to attack that shooter, that active shooter, that what you really want to go for is his hands, right?
Right.
Because
right.
that's what has the gun, right? The weapon, right?
Right.
So you want to push that weapon down. You push that weapon down, he can't shoot anybody.
Exactly.
So in this situation, the Butler sniper team, they couldn't get a bead on him, but they got a bead on that rifle, and they shot that rifle, which had to be a pretty good shot to do that,
Oh,
so
yeah, I'll say.
So I would say that not only do we need to applaud the counter sniper team of the Secret Service, we need to applaud Butler County's sniper team too.
I agree.
Because they were right on top of it, even though they did not have a clear shot at him and could barely see him. But when they did see him, they did take a shot at that rifle,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, remind us of your summary.
Well, we kind of summed it up this way, James. 3 things. Number one, planning was probably according to protocol, but follow-up was terrible and totally inadequate. Had they followed up, put somebody on that roof and got those radios, it might be a different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
That was number one. Number two, it was the roof.
Right.
That roof was not covered.
Yep.
And that has to be one of the greatest, most fatal mistakes the Secret Service has ever made. And number three, the third thing that we point out is about communication. Had communication been effective, and had everybody been on the same channel, and had the Secret Service taken advantage of the law enforcement's radios so that they could hear what local law enforcement was saying on the ground, this could have been prevented,
Right.
And it's sad that it didn't happen. So hopefully, and I think it will well be, is that I think in the future we're going to see these changes will help keep these people a lot more safe out there. And of course, even with all of that, I remember when I was at my law enforcement academy, the instructor said some really, really startling news to us. He said, we want to do our best to help you, give you the kind of tools so that you can go home to your family every night.
Hmm.
But he said, listen up. This is not on the test, but listen up. And he took his glasses off and he walked right up to us, and very solemnly he told us, he said, remember this, if you're an officer out there on the street, if anybody really, really wants to kill you, to shoot you, they probably can. And that's pretty solemn news, isn't it?
That is very solemn, very sobering.
But it's very true, you know.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
You know, an officer could be sitting in his car doing his paperwork. One of my friends was a highway patrolman in Tennessee. And while he was doing his paperwork one night, somebody walked up, shot him right in the head, you know. You know, these 3 more of my friends down in Tennessee were going to a domestic. A guy with a high-powered rifle. They were just driving up to the resident, did not even get out of the car before they were shot with a high-powered rifle. I had another friend here in Florida, Frostproof, Florida. He had been going to answer a bank alarm. And he had been, been there. It had been false alarm. So he pulls right up. He gets right out of his vehicle, doesn't even get to the bank before he's killed. So that's the kind of people that we are trying to encourage people to help us support at peacemakernetwork.com.
Right.
The kind of people that a lot of this will save them, will keep them and bring them home to their families. But ultimately, if a man just said, hey, somewhere, some place, I want to kill a cop, they're probably going to be able to do so, you know. Yep. And with all of this other stuff with the Secret Service, you know, there's always going to be somebody. I mean, you know, that was 150 yards away when that shot was taken. So there's probably going to be some places where somebody can take a shot at one of these people.
Oh, yeah.
But what we have to do, James, is we have to do the very best we can to limit that opportunity as much as possible. And they did not limit that opportunity as much as possible in this today.
Wow. Well, thank you for summarizing everything for this week. We look forward to what's going to be coming up this Sunday. Do you have something in mind?
Well, we still want to take a run at a few things, but we're still going to keep our ear to the media to see what is really cooking, because, you know, that one week we're planning for a episode on Sunday, and on Saturday, wow, the whole world took a collective grasp as somebody took a shot at the former president of the United States. So
that's right.
You know, stay tuned, folks. We'll make it interesting. We'll make it exciting. Hey, I did see, by the way, just for get people caught up, you know, we last one, besides this, we went into the Russ situation. A judge is now considering whether to let the armorer out of jail because of this, you know. So that's something for us to keep in touch with. I mean, what do you think is going to happen there?
I think she should have the same privileges that Alec Baldwin did.
Yep. But you know what I think will happen? I mean, the judge can do 1 or 2 things. He can do nothing. 3 things, actually. He can do nothing. Number 1, he can just let her out and say, hey, with prejudice, like they did Baldwin.
Right.
Or number 3, he can say you can have a new trial. So I'm thinking if they do it, they might let her have a new trial. I don't know. We'll see. Right.
May release her on good behavior, I guess.
Yep. All right, James. We want to thank everybody for listening today. Glad to have you aboard the Charlie Crime Train on our YouTube channel. Reach out to us with a shout out, gmail.com, charliecrimebuster, gmail.com. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep. For the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.